So today I have the pleasure of talking with Philippa. Philippa, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your business?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Philippa Brewell and I'm based in Kidderminster. My business is British history tours. So they are luxury history based um, tours, group tours, basically. I put them together. I also put together personalised itineraries, but the core of my business is the group tours.
Amazing. And what sort of tours can people do?
Well, they're all based on a person or an event or something around that. So the majority of mine at the moment are Tudor based because people want to, they're very, very interested in the Tudors. So, for instance, my every year I do the Anne Boleyn tour, and we stay at Hever Castle, which is her childhood home, and I coincide it with the date of her execution, which is the 19th of May, at which point we go to the Tower of London, which was where she was executed. So, and then we have speakers come along, so historians like Tracy Borman, Jonathan Foyle, people like that, to speak to the group, do little talks. And I always keep the groups small, so they're always around about 20, which means everyone has access to, to the speakers, to me, we always have a tour historian with us the entire time as well. So yeah, so that's a typical sort of tour, and I do about 3 or 4 a year.
Amazing. It just sounds, I've got so many questions just based on that, selfishly, in my own world. How did you start the business and how long's it been going?
Oh, well, I think I first limited the company, so I first registered the company in 2014, and I had the idea for it a couple of years before that. I mean, I'm a total history geek and I'm a travel geek. So I go to places, and somewhere where typically someone would spend an hour and just sort of go through, I will be there ridiculously long time, for half a day, full day. Um, and I'd go somewhere because I've read about it. I want to be somewhere, I want to learn that I've read about. I want to learn a bit more about what happened, because you go to these places, and for instance the room guides and people like that are in these places are so knowledgeable that you learn even more when you go. And what I realized was, I was there obviously with my having my geek on, but people would just be sort of wandering through and like, do you not know that you're in the space that this happened and that happened? Anyway, so it sort of got me really enthusiastic about sharing history and sharing it in the places that it happened. So that was sort of the grain of the idea. And I'd always known equally that I would like to run my own business. I was working for a big water company, in fact, which you'll all know at the time, but I knew I wanted to work for myself. So anyway, I combined those two things together with really no idea how I was going to make it work at all. Yeah, registered the company in 2014 and started running tours in 2018.
Amazing. And what's been your favorite tour, favorite experience that you've given to customers, I guess?
I mean, the Anne Boleyn tour, the one I say I do each year, is probably my favorite, for a number of reasons. One, I've done it so many times. It's, it's sort of, I know the lay of the land, but equally, because that one's amazing because we stay at Hever Castle the entire time. Everyone can just settle into living in a castle for 4 or 5 days. But then equally in July, I did some brand new stuff. So every year, every tour, pretty much, I'm trying to do brand new stuff as well, because my repeat custom is really high. It's like 75% of my customers have been with me before. So I'm always obviously trying to come up with new ideas. And somewhere in our region, actually, I took a group in July to Harvington Hall, which is Elizabethan Manor House, and we had the place to ourselves for the day, and we had the speakers come in and see us there, and we ate there, and that was amazing because people were like, I had no idea this place existed, and it is now one of my favorite places I've ever been. So to be able to do that for people is it's just amazing. And then the friendships people make, so that's another favorite that I have no control over, clearly, but that's another favorite part of what of mine, of what I do, is people forge friendships and then because they write to me and tell me, oh, we've been to see a show together, or we're coming back on tour together now, and things like that. It's great.
Yeah, it's always good to have that community feeling and
Mm.
just know that you've made a difference in people's worlds.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is. It's, you know, I used to want to badge everything as, you know, because they're luxury tours. They're not. Let's be fair, they're not cheap. So I wanted to badge it as a once in a lifetime experience, but I can't because people keep coming
Coming
back.
back. Amazing.
So it's like once in a lifetime that you'll want to do again.
Come and see this and come and see that. It's
Yeah.
brilliant. The with the business and the style of business that you do, was there any changes that you considered before COVID that then became a necessity?
Um, there were things I was starting to think about doing that I still couldn't do during COVID, but are now, I suppose, higher up on my priority list than they were before. So, for instance, I've got British history tours, and now I'm starting British history events, which are online summits and in person. I mean, I don't want to do everything online as well, but online summits, in person events, which might be but much shorter and therefore in a different price bracket to the week 6 day long tours. So that, because a lot of my market come from abroad, so the idea with the events and the shorter tours is a more UK based market, just in case. And you know, so that has become something that I thought, oh, I might want to think about doing, just to give a variety of choice. And now post pandemic, it feels like it's more of a necessity to have that broader range of offerings, just to, you know, try. I mean, who knows what the future holds, but just to give a little bit of a buffer, perhaps.
No, that makes absolute sense. And will you keep the kind of online platform going as well throughout that? Is there an audience for it?
Well, so during the pandemic, I began a Patreon site, so I share blogs and virtual tours. Again, probably something I would have ended up, well, in fact, I had a membership beforehand, so just on Facebook. So I sort of formalized that onto a Patreon. It's very different though, because like I say, you know, I'm in places and you're in somewhere where something happened, you can't replicate that online. You can share information and you can teach and you can have fabulous talks. So for instance, at the end of November, I've got a Stuart summit, and we've got a number of historians talking to us. We've got a quiz and a cheese and wine night. We're doing all that online, you know, so you can do quite a lot online, but it doesn't replace, it's just an extra. It doesn't replace the sort of in the space tours.
Yes, it doesn't give you the same kind of feelings and emotional attachment if you're stood in a great hall in anywhere, opposed to sat in front room with a glass of wine.
Exactly. Both are good, but they're different.
No, completely. And do you think with the current cost of living increases and those do you think that will change your audience, or do you think your audience is staying because of the nature of what you do?
I think so. I think for group tours, for instance, that's an audience that I think will stay doing that kind of thing, but with offering a more of a variety with online events, with shorter events, or you know, weekends and things like that. I'm hoping that will appeal to a broader customer base, because they're more affordable. The ticket prices aren't going to be anywhere near as high, so I can give that range, and it still gives people access to history, just in a slightly different way or a shorter format.
No, perfect. And then changing slight subject into this, what do you think has been your biggest learning since you created this amazing business?
I think it's a bit broad, but it's I think anyone probably who's running their own business, the biggest learning you do is about yourself. That sounds really cliche, but you know, you are it. If you get up in the morning and you don't want to do something, it's not going to happen. Nothing's going to everything grinds to a halt, and you're probably ending up going backwards. You learn what scares you, what motivates you, to learn what scares you for good reason and what scares you for bad reason, so you tap into your intuition, but sometimes we're just hardwired to be particularly concerned about something that isn't a concern. So I think you learn a lot about, or I've learned a lot about myself. The pandemic absolutely, that sort of floored me, and you have to rebuild, but you look back and go, wasn't great, but at least I got something out of it. And to speak to other people, to when the business is me, but I've now got sort of help, but also I speak to friends. I have trusted friends who are more business minded, because anyone out there with friends who want to help, but they're not, the ones I'm talking about, that they have the answer, just like that, it's a bit more complicated than that. So I have trusted people that I will go to, that I can bounce ideas off, that don't care if I've changed my mind fully the next day. They don't judge. So if that answers the question, but I think, learning a lot about myself and a lot about what I need for support to keep me going and stay positive. That sounds a little bit cliche as well, but going in the right direction. Not every day is going to be a happy day. When I say positive, you know what I mean? It's sort of, you're always progressing and not letting anything overwhelm you, because that is easy to do, I think, if you're on your own. It has been for me in the past. So
no, you're so true. It's that power of half a step forward is still a step forward, opposed to running 100 meters and then having to backtrack because you've gone down a rabbit hole. And
there's also, obviously, there's times where you do have to undo something you've done, and there's a resilience you learn with that you're still okay. It still can, actually sometimes that's opened up opportunities. There's bits of my business that I lost during the pandemic that actually have ended up opening, giving me opportunity to do other things with other people, for instance, and things like that wouldn't have been there had what felt like not a catastrophe, that's too strong a word, but what felt like a step backwards at the time. If that hadn't happened, then I wouldn't have had other opportunities. So I think it never feels nice, but you learn that to trust a little bit that you're resilient, and there's going to be stuff coming out of it that you wouldn't have had opportunity to do otherwise, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely, it makes perfect sense, and it leads swimmingly on to my next question, which is, if you could speak to your 18-year-old version of yourself, what advice would you give?
To not be so self-centered. So I think when you're 18 and actually older, you can think it's all about you. So take presenting as an example. I managed to do a 4-year business degree without presenting once. I was so petrified of standing up in front of people, which is ridiculous now because I do it all the time. And I'd missed that it's not about me, it's about what I'm presenting. And so I think that, that when I learned that, and in fact I learned that specifically by doing, I was asked to speak at a funeral, and I got myself really worked up and nervous, and then was like, hang on, Philippa, this is not about you. And realized, of course, nothing that you present and is actually about you. It's not about you. And that opened me up. This is before I had my business, so that opened me up to doing everything I do now. Standing up in front of tour groups. I've got a YouTube channel where I present history interviews, actually, and documentaries and things. None of that would have been possible if I'd have stayed in my 18-year-old mindset.
No, fabulous. Thank you so much. And what inspires you today? What keeps that kind of momentum going?
People's reactions to what I do, because it can be really hard, when all that's coming across your desk is what insurances you need, or what health and safety things you need to do, or your accounts, and you think, oh, or a complaint comes in, you know, or a query, I don't know, something, and you just think, why am I doing it? That's what, but it's people's reactions when I'm actually doing, I mean, tours, absolutely. The feedback is amazing. That really keeps me going. But equally, when I'm doing videos on YouTube, or I send out something to my Patreons, and you know, you can see you've brightened someone's day because you've given them something interesting to get their teeth into. They you know, that they're happy that they now have read or seen. So yeah, I think other people's reactions, knowing I'm actually giving them something, it's really powerful, actually. Yeah.
No, amazing. And I can see why you can see that you absolutely love what you do.
I do. I don't like all the other stuff that I just mentioned, but
Right.
who does?
And then finally, is there any offers or promotions that you'd like to share with the community?
So, well, I've got events on. So all my tours for 2023 are now on the website. Actually, one of the tours out the 4 is sold out, but my website is www.britishhistorytours.com, and you'll also be able to find on there, when I release them, details of events like the Stuart Summit, which is a weekend online event that we're doing. You'll be able to find all the details of those on there, and sign up to my newsletter if you like. And I just email you once a week, tell you where I've been and what I've been up to, and anything that's coming up.
No, perfect. We'll make sure that we'll put a link as well into the interview, what's it called, the end, top and tail, so that people can access it as well, which would be great.
Fabulous. Yeah. I'm really active on Instagram as well, if people like to sort of see where, you know, see different things. Yeah, I'm always cataloguing where I'm going and what I'm doing on there, which it's at British_history_tours on Instagram.
Well, Philippa, that is the end of our interview. Great job.